Welcome, everyone, to this fireside conversation on the topic of building a facilitation, training, consulting, coaching, business, and pricing, and all the beauty that it entails. For that, I have invited three previous guests to the show. I have here with me Jenny Millar and Michael Zipursky and Kirsty Lewis. And we have Edward here, Edward Quayle from the NDB community as our audience. An audience of one because I messed up the scheduling. This happens. Very happy to have you here. And we will kick off with maybe a round of introduction and around the question, how did you build your business? And what is the one advice you wished you have received earlier? So what were the steps where you started and where you're now, just so that we can get a little bit of an idea of where you're coming from and which perspective you bring to the conversation? Michael, do you want to start?
Sure, I can give the 60-second version, unless you want more time. But essentially, my background is building consulting businesses. Started my first with my cousin, transitioning between high school into university. Fast forward a few years, I went to Japan and opened up a branch office for one of our companies over there. Had lots of success working with large Japanese organizations. Came back to North America and decided to start an online, call it, kind of publishing business, essentially a place to share our experiences of building these different consulting businesses while we were running other, real businesses. And that took off. We had a lot of people saying, we really appreciate what you're sharing, helping us to avoid common mistakes or to accelerate our success as consultants, and really giving us an inside look into what is required to create success. And they said, do you have a course that we could take to learn more about what's involved in building a successful consulting business? And we said, no, we don't, but we'll create one. And so we did. And then we had many people go through that. Today, it's almost probably 1,500 people that have gone through that course. And people said, do you have a way to work more closely with you? Do you do coaching? And we said, no, we don't do coaching, but we'll consider creating a coaching program. And so we created what today is called the Clarity Coaching Program. We've had about 1,000 consultants go through that. We have a team of coaches that we have trained up that work with our clients. Our clients are all around the world in all different industries. They're all experts in their field, and they're typically small or boutique consulting firms or solo consultants that are looking to go from 6 to 7 figures and beyond in their consulting businesses. And that's the quick story. I think you asked also about what's maybe one thing that I wish I would have heard or knew earlier, and just the one that comes to mind. I mean, I think anyone who's been in business for a period of time, you'll have multiple lessons, multiple mistakes, multiple things that just, like you wish you would have known, right, with the benefit of hindsight. But one that I can think of that would have saved us some money in the early years would have been to really get more feedback from the marketplace before you launch something. So one of our other businesses, so I've built and sold different businesses over the years, but one of them, we essentially invested $25,000 at that time into creating something that we only found out once we had built it that nobody really wanted. And so that was a painful mistake, right? The importance of getting feedback from the marketplace before you actually build something, which is something that we've, since that time, many years ago, have shared with, with all of our clients. And it was a good experience. And luckily, we were able to turn that business around, make it profitable, later sell it. But that's the one that I think is really important, that regardless of what business you're in, whether it's a product-based business, service-based business, right? It's the importance of actually getting feedback from the marketplace, from the people who have the ability to buy, and not just spending too much time building yourself and kind of planning to infinity without actually getting that feedback.
What an important one. Just because you've built it doesn't mean you will sell it. Yeah, I think we all stepped into this mistake at some point, right? This learning opportunity at some point. Thank you, Michael.
Yeah.
I'll share. I come from a corporate background. I've done more years on my own now than I did in a corporate. So I worked for Diageo, sold beer, and then worked in global sales capability which at the time I absolutely loved, and then realized, oh, I'm pretty good at running workshops, and that's what I wanted to do. So I resigned to the aghast of very senior leaders and went out as an associate on my own in 2008 and became a gun for hire and worked in the space of, as a sales associate. But there's one thing that I've always had in the back of my head, which is how do we design and deliver workshops brilliantly? So the concept of School of Facilitation has always been there, and that's the business I founded back in 2014 and created SOF, as she's called. And now I work with corporates and the collective. Corporates is, as it says on the tin, it's B2B, it's L&D, it's how to design, deliver brilliant workshops. It's good to train the trainers, how to be a great facilitator, sharpening up people's learning. And then on the collective side, built a community. So we've got a community of facilitators and trainers, coaches, even the odd consultant slips through the door as well, Michael. And then in that space, how do you design workshops? How do you deliver, and creating spaces for people to come to connect and learn and share? One thing I wish I'd known. It's something I got told, actually, and I just shared it with someone in my community, which was your time gets divided up into three. So there'll be a third of your time is doing the delivery, a third of the time and doing the work you love, a third of your time is working in the business, i.e. all the back office, the numbers, the finances, the marketing, and then a third of the time is on your networking and your business building. And that has always sort of stayed with me. So when you get those quiet moments, don't freak out, because that's the gift. That is a gift for you there, and being able to have that space to do some thinking about what it is you're doing for your business.
Thank you, Kirsty.
My pleasure.
Love that. So I'm Jenny Millar. I'm a pricing specialist and founder of Untapped Pricing. So we're a boutique consultancy, and we help our clients get the clarity and the confidence to price their offering effectively to drive growth. I also teach pricing strategy at London School of Economics and entrepreneurship at Warwick Business School. Until 7 years ago, I was in the corporate world. The last 10 years with eBay, which is where my sort of specialism and deep interest in the field of pricing was really born. But it was time to kind of step away, actually both physically, because I was moving, and just headspace wise. So moved into the entrepreneurial ecosystem, wanted to work with earlier stage organizations, started freelancing, and quickly realized that there was such a great demand for help with pricing. Then I became the bottleneck in my own business, and so wanted to bring in others, put a brand around it, and kind of brought in other pricing specialists, but also specialists from related fields such as research, design thinking, facilitation, analytics. And now we get to make much more than the sum of the parts. And I haven't looked back since then. One thing I wish I'd known earlier probably was the importance of a niche. So when I left eBay, I had done various pricing roles, but amongst other things, and I was quite a proud generalist. But then coming into the freelance world, it was too broad. People kind of, I was describing all these things I could do for a prospect, and it was too wide. And so I could have done with learning more quickly that actually some people need a specialism or something to hang your hat on, so they can more easily and quickly join the dots with who you are and what you offer.
Thank you. And what a beautiful mix this is. And I'm really looking forward, because you have so different paths, how you stepped into it. And I would like to start with a question. building a bridge between what Kirsty said about how you spend your time, the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, and what Jenny just touched upon is hiring people or outsourcing. Because when I hear spending 1/3 on the back office, in the business, I'm like, oh, this is all the parts that I actually don't want to do, and that I try to delegate as soon as possible. So what is your experience with delegating, and when did you switch from being a company of one or maybe two, Michael, with your co-founder, to saying, okay, now it's time to get an additional person into the business?
Oh, that's easy. When I had too big a bag of receipts and I hated the thought of having to do my own invoices anymore. And Victoria, who's my finance manager, has been with me over 10 years plus. And we were neighbors. And I just said to someone one day at the gym, oh, I need some help. Like, this is the space that drains me, like brings me no joy. And for me, that was the finance side, in terms of raising the invoices, chasing the invoices, getting put on systems. We were sort of starting to grow and people were putting us in vendor systems. And I was like, that's just not my bag. That makes me cry. And yeah, found Victoria. So that was my first hire. And for me, because it was something that just brings me no joy. I was wasting money, basically, because I was wasting my time. So it was better that I spent some money hiring someone like Victoria. So that was my first hire.
I think for me, the trigger was actually landing a whale. So fortuitous situation, developed, scoped a really, really big project, managed to sell it, and then stepped into, we need to build the plane as we fly it mode. And it actually needed 9 consultants, whereas I'd previously been me with a little bit of help from my friends where required. So it required a really quick kind of onboarding of others, actually in a freelance capacity still, so could tap into really senior expertise. And it was, we could build more than the sum of the parts together. So actually the team expansion happened more quickly for Untapped because we found the work. So it was the project facing third, rather than the back of house that I think has been a more gradual growth over time.
For us, yeah, it's been, each business has been different over the years. So if I talk just about consulting success as the current business, today we're 16, 17 people. That went from being Sam and myself. I think actually from the day we launched, we had Vincent on our team, and Vincent had come over from one of our previous companies. And then from there, we built up with contractors to full-time, to more full-time, to more contractors. And I think the way that, Kirsty kind of described the thirds is interesting, because what we've tried to do pretty consistently is have everybody on the team, really identify like where they can create the most value, and the areas where they don't either enjoy, like it doesn't give them energy, or even worse, it takes energy away, or just where they're not good, or they just don't want to be spending their time doing that. We look at how can we create another role with that. And so if I think about the third, that doesn't apply to my role anymore, because I've spent time to essentially identify certain areas that I don't need to be involved in anymore. And we have others on the team that not only are very capable of doing those things, but they actually enjoy them. So I just got back, I mentioned to some of you before, from Miami, we ran an event there, had clients flying from all around the world, 3 days of masterminding and speakers and all that. Planning that is something that Sam, and I'd be involved a little bit, but Sam, my co-founder and cousin, would really kind of take that on. And we didn't enjoy that, but we have Naomi on our team now, and she loves doing that stuff. Like she just throw her into any kind of event planning stuff, and she's super excited to do it. So that's the kind of thing that we're always thinking about, is where can we make sure that people are spending their time doing work that not only they enjoy, but that can create value for the business.
And now I wonder whether there is a kind of curve when we are starting a business, maybe as a freelancer. And then first we do everything ourselves. We do have the third rule. And then we hire the first people. And then I think where it gets tricky, that we end up in a sort of managerial role, that suddenly we're not doing anymore what we actually signed up for when we started our business.
Is it also, yes, and I also notice you get to a point where you've got to decide, do I want to keep growing? Because do I want to be a leader of a business? Or in the instance of you and I, Miriam, what brings us joy? Probably being on our feet, facilitating, running sessions, galvanizing community. But actually, if you carry on growing, how much of that is still available to you? Because actually people want you to lead the business.
Yes. And actually, so I was wondering, so yes, you first do it all yourself, then you hire people and you get more into the managerial role. And then I think at some point you can hire an even larger team, even if they're just freelancers, so that you can focus on what you're really good at. And I wonder, do you have to go through this bump where you get almost caught in the managerial role, or can you skip that?
I'd say it's a choice. I think this is the biggest misconception about business, is that people believe that there's like a certain way to do things, that, others have done it this way, so therefore I need to do it that way. And of course it can often be beneficial to know, what others have done and the path that they've taken. But to me, that's actually the gift of business, is that you can create whatever you want. So if you want to grow and you want to be more just strategy, long-term, planning and leading the business, you can do that. But I've talked, on our podcast, the Consulting Success Podcast, I've interviewed, for example, founders of firms that are doing $100 million, dollars equivalent per year, and they still spend about 35 to 40% of their time in the trenches doing the delivery of work, not because they have to, but because they want to. And some people might say that that's not possible because, when you're running such a large firm, like, you need to be the CEO and you're not doing delivery. Others might not want to do delivery. And so that's then the opportunity for them to figure out how to get out of delivery as quickly as possible. So I think that, whether you're a solo facilitator or consultant, whatever you are, or you have a small team or you have a larger team, you can create whatever you want. You just need to be clear on what does success look like for you, and then kind of reverse engineer how to go about getting there.
Jenny, you had a big nod. Seemed as if you could relate to that.
Yeah, I think it is a delight when it is a choice, and I think it took me a while to recognize that it was, and it just tapping into what brings you joy and what empties your bucket, I think is also a life skill that I wasn't very good at early on, and now I'm much better at. But I was just nodding in agreement.
Yeah, and
no, but I think
sorry,
no, I was going to say, like, Jenny, I think your point is actually a really important one, because it's not always like abundantly clear, right? We don't always know in the early stages of being an entrepreneur what is possible, right? We're kind of conditioned to believe, like, if we talk about pricing, oftentimes people think like, oh, hourly fees is the way to do it, and that's the only way to do it, and people kind of get locked into that. And we can find examples of that throughout all aspects of business. But I think you're right. It's just even getting to a point where you can see the potential or realize what is and isn't possible, or what the limits are. And often those kind of limiting beliefs that we believe as business owners, they're only limiting beliefs that are in our own mind. But once we see, we can think bigger, we can take bigger action, we don't have to work within the constraints of those, it opens up so much more possibility.
Can I just share, I heard a great phrase today on another podcast: professional paranoia. And this will mean something to Jenny. So it was a money expert man called Martin Lewis. Fascinating man. But he was saying, he's really values driven, and it's about the truth of a matter. And he would not sign off certain deals or projects they were working on because it would not hit the core values. And also he didn't, because he was a money savings expert, he said it's really important that what we bring to people is real deals. It's not like something that's fake, or you take it from us and we're taking from it. He talked about the professional paranoia piece, because he's like, I need to be seen to be doing it right, and I need to be seen to doing it well. And if that doesn't happen, I'm not doing it at all. And it's just something you said there, Michael, that made me think of, I know I sometimes suffer from professional paranoia because I won't do things because I don't want to be perceived as an expert, and then people put you on pedestals, because that scares the shit out of me. I don't want to be on, and it's back to limiting beliefs, you know, so we don't do things because of the limiting beliefs. That's where I was going.
Yeah, and I was thinking of the concept of the niche. So how do you, Jenny shared in your initial statement that your biggest learning was to find your niche, and I think all the big business advisors, consultants, they always say you can never niche down enough, and still there is this fear of missing out, or maybe the unknown. So in which niche do I actually want to position myself? How did you, and I can only speak for myself, I accidentally ended up in the niche of facilitation. I didn't know what facilitation was 2 weeks before I started the podcast. And then accidentally go into that and actually enjoyed it.
Or maybe that's why you started the podcast, to do your self-discovery.
Absolutely. Initially it was all about workshops work, and the facilitation bit then became the more important one, but it wasn't planned. So I would be curious, how do you approach the niching down? How did you find your niche? And could it become a trap to be in your niche?
Yeah, so I think in my situation, I found the niche of pricing based on how others were reacting to a much broader offering, and they just kind of glazed over or weren't referring me to other situations because it wasn't tangible enough to be able to make an introduction or a referral or pinpoint how I could actually help in their business. And the focus on pricing came just out of observing the pain that those I was around were feeling around the topic. And given my background and kind of deep interest in it as a growth lever, like that was clearly the area to double down on. And I think the validation then just built and built because my business has grown, and everywhere I turn, whether it's kind of organizations of all shapes and sizes and sectors, like there is that deep discomfort or lack of confidence with how to price, and there are different maturity levels, but there's a lot of, like, pricing is so often neglected or overlooked in a company, but it's a very powerful thing to unlock.
How did you know, Michael?
Well, I mean, how we knew was just looking at, I was at a family barbecue one summer, and my cousin Sam and I were doing different businesses at that time, after kind of running maybe 2 or 3 businesses prior to that. And we knew we wanted to do something online. We just saw the writing on the wall in terms of that's where the opportunity would be. We wanted to have an opportunity to create a business where we could, live and work anywhere. And so we thought, well, what can we start sharing, information about? Like, where do we have the most experience that we can kind of talk, hopefully somewhat intelligently about? And that seemed to be consulting, because we built all these different consulting businesses over the years. And so that's what we did. And we put it out, started writing articles and got feedback. And so the market kind of told us, or kind of guided us to go in that direction. But I think, to the whole question of niches, and I was smiling when you said niche, because so often I'm on podcasts and people talk about niches. So it's refreshing to be on a podcast of niches
With
and not
Europeans.
niches. Well, yeah, so you guys in Europe, I'm in Canada, although we have clients, many in the US and all over the world. So that's why I hear the niche so much. I think most niches are much larger than most people think. Right. So to somebody, you might hear like Jenny's business of pricing, like, oh, like how big could that be? Well, pricing can be massive, like the extent, and it's in every single business, like, in the world, like so pricing can be very, very large. I think it's important for people to really think about what kind of business do you want to build, right? And do you want to build a massive business? And if so, then you're probably not going to be as niche forever. You might start. And so this is like, I give this example a lot when I'm talking about developing ideal client clarity and developing your messaging. Most people look at large established in our world of consulting. They look at like large firms. So take an LEK or a BCG or whoever it might be, and you look at their website and you see under capabilities, it's like 25 different things. Like they do everything for everyone. You look at their their messaging on their homepage. It's like we transform the future or something. Just like you have no idea what they mean, but it works for them. They're successful. So people look at that and they go, oh, this is a very successful company. I should do this as well. I shouldn't be pigeonholed or kind of stuck just focusing on one little thing, because success comes from obviously being very broad like these firms. But you got to go back in time. And if you look at like LEK, they didn't start with 25 capabilities and thousands of consultants. They started with a few partners, and their initial focus was merger and I think shareholder advisory services, because they saw that the other larger consulting firms weren't focusing on that. That's how they built their business. So I think when people kind of are concerned about being too niched or too specialized, number one, remember that your business will evolve as you evolve. And so what you start with doesn't mean that that's where you're going to be all the time. But if you go too broad, there's no way that anyone will take notice to you, because you're just one amongst many, right? There's no differentiation. So starting with a niche, starting with an area of specialization, starting where you can have a bit of an advantage and stand out, gives you more momentum and the ability to gain some traction. And then from there, you can expand. But back to my earlier point about, how big do you want your business to be? For most people, whether you're a coach, you're a facilitator, you're a consultant, you can build a very successful business, into the multi-millions of dollars per year, or pounds, or, euros equivalent per year, with a very, very narrow niche or area of specialization, because you don't need generally that many clients to create that level of business. So I think oftentimes people worry too much about going to specialize in too niche, but they haven't actually run the economics or the numbers to see, well, like how many clients do we actually need? It's like, you don't need thousands or tens of thousands of clients. You need maybe 10, 20, 50 a year, and you're going to have a wildly successful business.
I was the opposite on the niching piece around. I knew I wanted to be a trainer and a facilitator, because I just loved doing that. I didn't know, and I knew I wanted to give something back but I didn't know what it was, and it took me ages to work it out. And I tested, and I've got an email that I sent in 2009 where I tested to a few companies the concept of doing more detailed training on training and design, and I got no response. So I just took that as a massive knockback, and so I just went, fine, no one wants this. But then what I discovered, I was living in London and I couldn't find a community. I couldn't find other people like me to have great conversations with. A rather well-known international facilitation association never replied to my emails ever, and I just thought, well, sod you. So that's when I started breakfast meetings and gatherings, and launched them in London in 2014. And suddenly, it was like, oh, people do want to come to this. People are seeking community and connection and conversation. So that's where I suddenly was like, oh, okay, so maybe there is something to my itch that I've had, not a niche, an itch that I needed to work out. And that's where School of Facilitation started to come to be. And then the pandemic was a blessing for me, in that it sort of escalated again the desire for community and connection. So that's how I ended up where I am now.
I think niche takes different forms, right? Because we've just talked about types of services, about profile of organizations or size. It could be about kind of the outcome or the situation at hand. And I think all of those things could be the lead for honing in on work where you specialize. But yeah, I think how people define their niche is also quite varied.
Yeah, and I wonder, because in order to then be successful in your niche, you really have to create value for them and hence speak their language, know them. And I think that's also why it works, because the more general you are, the more vague you are. Transforming the world, yes, works for the very big, but otherwise, right? Who are you to transform the world? So how do we know, or how do we define value that we're creating, and who defines it? Because this is what then comes before the pricing and then actually starts the business development, is we have to start by creating value for someone. How do we know that? How did you know that, oh, you're onto something that actually creates value?
So I'm so glad you talked about value before we come on to pricing, because so often there's a big breakdown between, we understand our outcomes and our value we're creating, and then there's this big gulf between, bottom up, how long is it going to take us? Let's sort of think about price. So good framing, Miriam. I think value is definitely in the eye of the beholder. So it's highly subjective. It can change with time, and it's all about, so let's take facilitation. The same facilitation techniques could take team A to a very different place to team B, depending on how they need your help getting unstuck, or where they need alignment, or the size of the problem, or the level of risk that they're looking to reduce. And I think you can only find out by having those really rich conversations up front in that scoping process about looking about defining what they're looking to achieve, and about what it looks like if they don't do this. That can be as a powerful line of questioning as what if we do this well.
And the market is so big, and since the pandemic, everyone is online. Everyone promises that they will transform the world, that they will create value. And then I think there are different ways how we can actually show up in this space and hopefully convince that we create value. It could be the companies we worked for before, as it could be the way we speak. It could be content marketing. How did you attract your very first client and show them that there is value that you're creating?
Yeah. For us, it was, go ahead, Kirsty.
Go on, Michael, you've got a formed answer in your head.
I mean, yeah, for me, this is a very clear answer, because it's really been the backbone of everything that we've done from day one, and it is content. So we're very big believers in creating value, educating, hopefully, being helpful to people, and playing the long term. So we give before we expect to get. And so if you look at consulting success, we have probably over 1,000 articles at this point. We've done studies. We have the Consulting Success podcast. We have the YouTube channel. We have books. So we've just put out a lot of stuff, because Jenny's commentary and thoughts around creating value and identifying value as part of a conversation is right on. I completely agree with all that. And yet, even before the conversation, you should be creating value for people, so that when you have the one-to-one conversation, you don't need to try and justify or sell or talk about how good you are. That should already be established through your content. And to me, that is the most powerful way of doing it, because it allows you to do it at scale, right? So when you do it right, you're actually providing massive value to people. you're helping them to feel comfortable with you. You're getting them to actually reach out to you, right? So you're generating more inbound opportunities through your content. And that's what we've done. And that's what we try different things and test different things, but that still is the backbone of what we do at Consulting Success today.
I absolutely concur, Michael. And actually, as you were like listing all the different ways of adding value, Miriam, you went through my head, as did SOF, because I was like, well, yeah, we both put out podcasts, we both write about it, we both add value when we talk on LinkedIn or Instagram. Like our newsletters, I know both add value. Like it's not going, look at me. It's like, let me share something that I've seen. Let me put an insight into the room. There's a give back. And I've always had a karma mentality. So coming from a big business background, but I can do the woo with the way any day. But I do think what goes around comes around. And karma, like I've got my values up here, and abundance and generosity are two of them. And so I'm quite happy to give, but you have to know then when to take back, because if you're just in the space of giving all the time, we're not charities, and you need to earn a living, and you might have a mortgage to pay and a family to feed, or a cat or a dog, or you're just yourself. And this is where you've got to value yourself of what you bring to the party. I was thinking as well, because I deal in both business to business, B2B, and also B2C, business to consumer. And so when I was thinking from a B2C perspective, like business to consumer, where I notice my value is often in messages that I get. So people sending an email in response to the newsletter, thanks, that's inspiring, you've given me some ideas there, or a comment or a DM, or someone just going, I've just downloaded the ebook, thank you, that's super helpful. So that's where I notice that there's value. Whereas when I'm in the corporate space, to what Jenny just said, I'm lucky people come to me and go, I've done enough stalking of you, I can see what you do, how you talk, what you're bringing, so can we just have a conversation now? Like, and I hate the idea, Michael, of doing that. I have to sort of pitch why I should be there, because I'd hope we're having a conversation because you know what value I can bring already. So yeah,
I think we've probably all felt the difference in kind of talking to a lead that's come through cold outreach, and you have to prove yourself and sell before you can have a proper conversation. Whereas it's done, as you say, Michael, done before you even talk to them, through all of the content or the different variety of value gives that you might have given them beforehand. But I do think then when it comes to pricing, so where the content marketing or whatever format of information that you're putting out there to give value, where it's there isn't a one-way dialogue, almost you're relying on the recipient to then make the leap to applying that to their own world. Whereas I think when it comes to kind of then a proper scoping conversation with a prospective client, they may need more help than you think joining the dots for what it means in their specific scenario. So perhaps like an example, if it's helpful, so at Untapped, like if we are kind of starting a conversation with a team, pricing is always invite strong opinions in a leadership team, right? Lots of disagreement, lots of debate. The debate might be healthy or not, but it's going to be slowing progress, if not stopping it altogether. And so we invite people to join us for like the team of stakeholders to join us for a 90-minute session. We call it Pricing Springboard. We take them through some exercises to align as a team on where they want to get to, surface some of the challenges that are going to get in the way. We'll share some observations and provocations on their current approach and some ideas for how we can help. We've chosen for that to be a free session, and don't just offer that out willy-nilly to anybody, but it's a way to, whether we're going to work together or not, the prospect makes progress on the topic, gets a flavour for how we work, and we get all the inputs we need to make a recommended approach. But part of those exercises are crystallizing exactly what this would mean or this would unlock if we do this well. And yeah, I think you have, at the end of the session, we've created some value around the topic as well as a roadmap. And then everything we hear from that senior leadership team, we're playing back then from then onwards in the language we use in the proposal, framing the pricing, our own pricing that will come later. So I think, yeah, that's how we do it.
Yeah, you create the pull. So you've demonstrated, you've shown them, like you said, this is what we can, this is how we work, this is how we do things. And you've got them excited, and there'll be at least 2 people out of 5 in that room who are suddenly like, no, we want to work with them, even if there's the naysayers and the doom and the glooms. But you've created tangible benefits for them already, so they've got the outputs, and you've got your language to write a great proposal, and you're saying it in their words. And like, so what's not to like?
And Edward just read my mind. She added to the chat, I hear the principal value of generosity again in what Jenny just said. And yeah, I hear generosity and abundance. And I also hear paying it forward. And then I wonder, is it really this abundance mindset that we have to first invest? So when we start, and there might be some in the audience, and I hear it very often, who would like to start their own business, and they may be still in the security, and they want to take the leap forward. And then does it mean that your recommendation would be to paying it forward, to lead with generosity, first to share, to create an audience of fellowship, to offer free sessions? I see some hesitation, some smiles, some...
I mean, I'll share a thought on that. So the first thing I'd say is to be very clear. So if you're in a position, let's say you're working a full-time job or some kind of employment, you're not yet running your own business, get clear on why you want to create your own business. And also, you know, entrepreneurship these days has been kind of put on a bit of a pedestal. It's something that, you know, a lot of people should aspire to, is kind of like the narrative out there. And I don't believe that everybody should be in entrepreneurship. It's not always easy. The rewards are fantastic. The benefits, right, are magnificent. But it can be taxing. It can be challenging. You have ups, you have downs. There's all kinds of stress and fear and anxiety and just like everything that comes with it. And over time, you learn to channel that and to welcome it and to kind of ride the wave. But if you're not prepared for that, or if that idea just really scares you, it may not be the right thing for you. So I'd say that's number one. Number two, if you are still in employment, I think this right now, like today, it's a fantastic time for you to begin building your brand and to begin sharing your ideas, your experiences, your observations, your insights with the world. And whether you do that through a newsletter, you do that on a blog, you do it LinkedIn, like just choose a platform where you believe your ideal clients are and start sharing. Because if you're in a place right now where you already have income, right, coming in, then you don't have to have or feel the need to try and, you know, generate a sale and have that pressure. So that there's no better time than right now just to put your ideas out there. And what you'll find when you do that, if those ideas are welcomed, if you're kind of filling a need or you're helping to solve a pain point or a challenge that people have, you're going to get feedback from the marketplace. People will start to say, hey, like, I really loved that article. Tell me more about that. Or could you come into our event and speak? Or I'd like to have you on our podcast. And you'll start seeing that kind of stuff. You'll also start to build an audience so that when you decide, you know, that you do want to transition into creating your own business, becoming a coach, a consultant, a facilitator, whatever it might be, you're going to have an audience that you can announce that to. And those people will almost always be the first ones to take you up on your offer. So when you say, hey, big news, I've decided to leave, you know, Microsoft, and I'm now going to get into this area, you're going to have people that already know you, like you, trust you. They see you as an expert already. So they're going to be the first ones to raise their hand and say, yeah, like, I'd love to actually have a conversation with how you could help us. I've been following your work for the last 6 months or 18 months. And I think you could definitely help us. Boom. Right. And so that makes that transition a lot easier.
I I agree with Michael. And I think if you want to do things for free, content is free perception. But if you're suddenly going to go, I'm going to run a workshop, well, is it virtual? Is it in person? If it's in person, there's a cost. And if you suddenly start inviting people to free events, one of the things I've noticed is people go, oh, I've got like 50, 60 people signed up. And I like, how many came? Only 5. And they're gutted. And I'm like, because there's no balance of exchange. The balance of exchange, you are giving and they are taking, but there's no reason for them to come, because there's been no even monetary exchange. And I think even just a nominal £5, $10, whatever it might be, creates this balance. We've now got a mini contract going off between us. So the fact that I've spent some money, I'm like, okay, I'm going to turn up because I want to do this. So I do think there's an element of that, because if I've given away lots of free content in advance already, in terms of a blog, I've written an ebook, someone's downloaded something, it's be aware.
I totally agree. I think in that instance of a free session, you've devalued it with free, and so the example I gave of the pricing springboard from Untapped, that is deliberately a free session, but it came through great experimentation and demonstrating that it worked as a conversion tool. So it builds trust, it makes the scope better, builds alignment and kind of belief from the team, and we're in a great
purpose.
And I think where I see the biggest difference is that you're addressing people who are warm leads, and they are not short, hopefully not short in money, or they're shorter in time than in money. So when they decide that they will join you on this discovery workshop that is free in terms of a financial compensation, they are investing their time to find out whether you want to work with each other so that they can save time in the future by spending money. And I think when in the facilitation business, we host a free workshop to show our craft or our talent, and then say, okay, free for everyone to join, then usually who do we attract? We attract those who are abundant in time and short in money. And these are not the people we want to sell our services to.
Yeah.
Well said.
And then do you think that, and we talked about content marketing and the cold sales, and it sounds as if none of you is actually doing the cold sales because you got it right with a content strategy or placing yourself and getting the word out there. And I was wondering actually whether the concept of marketing has replaced what we used to call sales. Or there's not
in our business.
No, not in my business.
No, mine.
Marketing is marketing. Selling is selling. Selling happens for me when I am sat in front of one of my clients, when I'm with my corporates, is how I have a sales conversation. Now, it looks like I'm just having a good chat, and that's what a good sales conversation is. It's building relationship, it's building connection, it's building understanding of their needs. That to me is selling. Has marketing changed shape? Absolutely, because where I started out in marketing, it was classic brand marketing, above the line, below the line. You had the big brands. What we are all now are marketeers, because we have businesses and we have small businesses, and marketing has moved to digital. It's moved to above the line. It's moved to below the line. You have to be, there's so many different forms.
Below the line mean?
Above the line is TV, it's cinema, it's billboards. Below the line would be the marketing I used to get involved with, is where you see it in a retailer. So when you're walking a shop and you get like a big bog off, like buy one, get one free, or Jenny's smiling, like end of gondola with like the pop-up stands in cardboard where it's like, buy me, buy me, buy me. That's below the line marketing. Now, we don't need to do that in our businesses to any great extent, though some people may choose to, but we're more in the digital space. So for me, that's, and how you market yourself digitally for us lot, I think is really important.
Yeah. I also just add, the size of the engagement or transaction, depending on how you look at it, could also change this. So if the cost is very low, right? Many businesses, especially if it's a business to consumer or business to, micro business, marketing may in fact kind of take everyone from bringing that person into your world or to your website and converting them into becoming a client because they're signing up themselves. And in that case, there isn't really need for a sales function because it's already built into the marketing and the conversion. But I think for everyone here, or at least for most of us in some of our offerings, right, if you're dealing with another business and you're talking about a sizable engagement size, that requires a conversation. Most people are not just going to sign up for a £10,000 or a €50,000 engagement, or 6 figures or 7-figure engagement without having a conversation. And so, and most often it's going to be multiple conversations, not just one, depending on the size, again, of that engagement. And so that's where you need to have a sales strategy, and it's thought out, right? There's an actual process to pre-sales and the initial conversation and scheduling and, the agenda and follow-up. And there's a lot that goes into it. The same way that you'd be thoughtful about your marketing, you're also thoughtful about your sales, and you're tracking your different metrics and conversions. And so I think there's multiple considerations, but yeah, I'd still see sales as being very important, and a clear distinction between what happens in marketing and what happens in sales. And usually there's different people. You usually don't have, again, depending on the size of the business, but somebody who's doing all your marketing may not be the one doing the sales. If it's a smaller business, it's probably the same person doing everything. But generally, somebody who's very good at sales isn't necessarily as good at marketing or demand generation or those kinds of things.
Definitely. I'm so glad you said, by the way, it's really hard to make a sale in one meeting. I think that's something that we need to let people know. It takes time to win business, especially in the corporate sense. So we know it takes time to warm someone up. You get the meeting in the diary, have the initial meeting, create the proposal, then you have another meeting, then you might have a meeting on the meeting. You might have to go through procurement. If you're over 6 figures, watch that space, bring it in under 6 figures, and you might not have to deal with procurement. And then you might have to have a mini negotiation at some point as well. So let's be really clear. It can take, depending on the size of the prize, 6 months to get a deal agreed. It could do. And then there's other times it takes a month, but it's not in one meeting.
Or rarely. Yes, sorry, Jenny.
Sorry, Miriam. I was just going to say, like in my world, I think the delineation between sales and marketing is also about level of intent. So marketing is, the goal is about being top of mind at the right time, or when the time is right. And then the sales process is there at the point that it's the right time, and kind of converting you into a client.
So basically, to make sure that when the time is right for them, they will actually reach out because you're on top of mind, because the marketing was right. And then when they reach out, to be able to convert them so that they actually turn from a lead into a client.
Yeah.
I lost my point.
Sorry. Sometimes that can take years, right? To just seed it, and you don't know when you're top of mind until they choose to respond or reach out. And you don't know when that would be, and it might be days after the first time you popped up on someone's radar somehow in some format, and it might be much longer.
And I wonder, this is also because we have trust-based businesses. So when someone comes to Jenny or to Enterprises pricing, then they trust your advice and your guidance. And the same is true with Michael, Kirsty, and even me. So we're not selling cars, or we're not selling a product that would function with everyone. And then I wonder, it's even more difficult if suddenly we're working with a team, that it's not always us who's delivering the service. So we actually need to build the trust that goes beyond our own capabilities or personalities. So how do we do that?
We make really good friends with very good people who know their onions, as we say in English. I say this because Miriam and I have worked together, and I only work with really good quality facilitators and trainers and coaches, and I do my due diligence and I get to know people. I see them on their feet. I want to know that when they're in front of my clients, that they know what they're talking about. So I think it's really important that we build our own networks, not just externally with our clients, our corporates or our communities, but we need to grow our networks, almost an internal network as well, of who do I want to work with, like who fits our brand, our values. That's where I go.
And so I totally agree with that. I also think expectations can vary. So for prospects that don't know much about your business, I've had some that say, oh, it will be you leading the project, right? Right through to, oh, when do you hand us off to your team? As in, we'll never see you again. So I think, you know, that trust definitely can carry very well. So carry to those that you then trust to bring into the situation, to your point, Kirsty. But also expectations on your role as the lead. If you're leading the BD, or you're the face of the business, can vary as well. So think about when to set that expectation.
Do you know, I sometimes use the language of we. So if I know that it's a project beyond me, or I genuinely know I'm not going to have the capacity to work with them at a certain, if they've got timelines, I go we, or I refer to the team, and I do that very early on, and I'm really deliberate that there'll be other people on this project, and so they're not surprised when I put the proposal in, or I say, actually Miriam's working on this, or Sarah's going to be on this, and that gets a good response. Or if they say, but we want you, I'm like, okay, so there's some, this is my availability, and this is the pricing that goes along with Kirsty, and that helps as well, because then they're like, that gives them scope for make a decision. Do you want it now? You can have one of my team, or if you want it later, you can have me. That's where I go.
Michael, was there something on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I spoke to a client about this actually just the other day, so that there's a few thoughts I can share. The first, I think the values piece is incredibly important in all aspects of team building, hiring. You know, the moment that you start focusing on values and not ignoring a feeling that you have about someone, you know, that's usually when things either go right or go wrong. So I think that's kind of an overarching consideration. The next is putting the spotlight on your team or on your people. Very often people feel stuck to kind of shift work to others or delegate work to others because they put the spotlight on themselves, and so the client expects them, they see them as the expert. But if you have a team, again, whether they're full-time contractors, just, you know, like strategic alliances, but if you spotlight those people from the beginning, whether it's on your website or in initial conversations, the client then, or prospective clients, the buyers, right, can see that it's not just you. And so it's a much easier transition when you actually pitch the project or talk about what the next steps are and who's involved, because the client sees that there's a team of experts. It's not just you know, at the forefront. And then I think the expectations piece is really clear. You know, usually when you just come out and say to a client, like, here's our process, here's what it looks like, and you set very clear expectations and you show that you have a system, you have a process, clients don't actually care if you're involved. Like they think they do. It's the same as like clients don't actually care how long it takes you to deliver on a project, as long as it's within a reasonable time frame. What they care about is the outcome, right? So your job as the expert is to show them that you have a very clear process that's going to take them from where they are right now to where they want to be. And as long as you can demonstrate that and communicate that with confidence, they're going to go along for the ride. It doesn't mean they won't have any questions or objections, but if you can show them, here's how we do this, here's the team that's going to get you there, here's why they are in these seats, rest assured, we're experts at this, we're going to get you there. That's what clients need to hear. And then, of course, status updates throughout the project to make them feel confident and comfortable that things are going in the right direction. But yeah, again, generally, my observation is that this is more an issue in the mind of the consultant or the coach, the concern, the worry of, what's going to happen and does it have to be me? And then even if the client requests that, the person will say, okay, yes, I'll do it, because they're worried of, losing the contract or losing the project, where in fact, if you just come out and you're clear on all these things up front, it makes it much easier.
And would you differentiate in pricing then? So
No.
Is there a different price tag if you do it yourself or if you delegate it to someone else?
Well, so here, right, again, it's your choice. Like if you want, so I'd say yes. Like let's say if I'm going to get involved in a project directly, I'm doing the coaching with the clients. And in fact, I do that with some clients. Yeah, the investment in that for the client is going to be significantly greater than if it's going to be with, with our coaches and kind of our general system and plan. But that's by design. But I would say that it's up to you, right? If you want to be involved in delivery and make that part of your business, then you just get to choose how you want to bill for that. If the outcome that you're creating for the client is the same, then you might charge the same. But if let's say by having you involved, you can create a greater outcome, whether it's faster or bigger, then you can obviously charge more for it. But back to the point that Jenny made earlier, like the value is in the eye of the beholder. And so if a prospective buyer sees greater value by having you involved in the project and you want to be involved in the project, then of course you can charge more for it. But you also have the ability to build a system or build a productized offering or build a team so that you don't need to be involved in delivery if you don't want to be.
Thank you. I love that it always comes back to it's your business. You can decide. Yeah. And in the businesses we run, so for facilitators, consultants, trainers, usually the value or what happens afterwards depends not only on our work and the value we potentially create, it also depends on whether they're taking our advice when we're the consultants, whether they follow up on the workshop and actually implement the ideas they came up with during a workshop. So how do you close that gap that actually there is a black box between what you promise and what comes out at the end?
So I think it's really critical in that scoping process and sales process to lay out exactly what is required from the team in question. So not your team, but the client team. So like all the steps in that black box, as you refer to. So once we have got to this point, or kind of commitment in terms of time, decision making, other supporting resources, not only during your engagement, but afterwards. And then I think asking for that, like a commitment and accountability, perhaps even helping them being that accountability partner afterwards as well. Because I think you're absolutely right that then the realization of the value that you are such a big part of creating will be judged based on something that with components that are outside of your control. So I think the sooner that you can bring to life what those things are, the better.
Also add that, most people don't want to or don't need to be in the babysitting business, meaning that your clients should be adults, not kids. And that's part of the conversation, right, with a prospective client, to really make sure that this is the kind of client that you want to work with. And as Jenny's talked about, setting the expectations of what you're going to do and what you are not going to do, and what level of support the client is going to need. At the end of the day, none of us can can ensure that clients are actually going to get X result if they don't do the work, right? There's going to be some, unless it's a completely done for you type of service where you're guaranteeing a specific outcome. But if success requires the client's involvement, then they obviously have to provide that involvement. Otherwise, it's, that's out of your hands. You can never force a client to do anything, right? You can't twist people's arm into signing up to work with you, and you can't twist their arm and force them to take action on something if they don't want to. So this is why I think the client selection piece is also so important. But the other thing that I would add on top as an opportunity for everyone is that's where kind of an upgraded offer, or as some people might refer to it as an upsell, presents itself. You strategically, if you know that a lot of your clients are going to need some hand-holding or some additional coaching or additional facilitation or training or whatever, advisory services, then build that in as an offering. So instead of saying it's 25,000 euros, for this project, and it's going to be 12 weeks, you might say that if for 40,000 euros, we'll advise you over the next 6 months, because we know that very often you're going to have questions and challenges. Your team's going to need some support, and we want you to ensure that you're getting this specific outcome. And so to increase the chances of that happening, or to really make sure that it does, we'd recommend that this package for you. And now the client is going to get that level of support. They get to select it. They're making an investment into it. So as Kirsty was talking about earlier, it's like they have skin in the game, right? Because if they don't have skin in the game, they likely are not going to take action. And so I think that is the opportunity for every service provider, is to have some level of ongoing support, or a package that clients can select to increase their chances of being successful.
And I'd go to the opposite end of the process, so the beginning of the process. So one of the things we do more now is a diagnostic or a discovery phase, because it's so easy for the client to go, this is what we need. Can you do this? Can you design that? Can you run a workshop? And it's very easy for us to go, yeah, absolutely. But actually, more often than not, there is a load of digging that you need to do to really truly understand what is going on. And therefore, in the diagnostic phase, it could be anything. It might be just some one-on-one interviews virtually, just to understand what it is happening, say, for a team. Or it might be a bit of quantitative research, so a very simple survey or some questions that you put out through that you can get some information back. We often do ideation workshops with our clients. So they're actually in the workshops with us, telling us what it is they need. So again, that we can then take that, because we're designing learning, and is the example I have in my head. So whilst we're really good at learning design, the topics that they're wanting the learning to be designed upon, that's not necessarily our remit. So they're telling us, they're showing us what they have. And then that piece around collaboration, I think, is really important. So we want to teach people to fish rather than to be going back all the time, and which I think is quite an old school model of, we'll always be there. We'll always be in your business. But I want to show you how to do it for yourself and create solutions for you that really work. Now, if you come back to me in a few years' time, different project, happy with that, but I don't want to keep coming in and running workshops for you that you could actually do yourself. So I think there's this diagnostic piece as well, Michael, and I love that piece around how can we be your supported advisor after the moment as well.
I have a final question. How do you price your services? What is your process of, just because I heard Michael speaking about the package. Jenny, as the pricing expert, wondering how do you price your services? I remember from our podcast conversation about the 3 tiers. So I have implemented 3 tiers in everything I sell now.
How's it going?
Fantastic. Yeah, it really works. Obviously, except of the digital products. But every offer I send out now is always packages in 3 tiers. And still, what I'm now curious about, what's behind this kind of shiny package?
Choice.
Yeah, exactly that. That seems to be the theme for today, doesn't it? So I think so what we're talking about here is offering choices at different price points, and you're switching your customer from a binary, oh, yes, no decision into how shall I work with you mindset. And of course, you can then also anchor them on your gold offering, so the best that you can create for them, rather than sort of laying out a bronze, silver, gold, whether you're putting these options on a page or narrating them. I definitely recommend switching it around so it's gold, silver, bronze. So you're anchoring them on the very best you can offer, the highest price, and then playing to that loss aversion as you sort of de-scope the silver and de-scope further to get to bronze. But I think offering choices can feel like you haven't listened well in the scoping process. But again, back to what Kirsty was just saying, sometimes people don't know what they need or what they want, and you're hearing things that perhaps aren't in their minds as they are putting the brief to you. And so use your expertise and experience to kind of curate these choices and take them to different places based on everything you've heard. I think definitely, again, tying back to our conversation so far about value and outcomes, reflect the language they use as you describe each option. At Untap, we talk a lot about selling the cake, not the ingredients. So, really, where's it going to get you? And that should be the primary focus, rather than, I don't know, the number of workshops or the time it's going to take or the number of team members or those sort of component parts. That's not what drives the decision. The value proposition of the package you've created will drive that decision.
And I totally get that. And I'm sure that Michael and Kirsty will agree. And what I would be curious about, what is behind that? So of course you give them the kind of package, but how do you do it for you? Are you calculating the hours that you or your team members will put on it? Or and then maybe you do, I guess we have to, but then do you add a percentage to that? Or is there
how do it so at Untap,
what's your
always offer usually 3 is a very magic number in this situation. We don't want to kind of cause decision fatigue, but there's that Goldilocks effect that you can unlock. So we always do that. It tends to be fixed price depending on the scope of each package. I think there's definite, so think about a thermometer, right? You've got your cost to deliver the piece of work at the bottom of the thermometer, value to the customer at the top, and you need to price somewhere in between. So the difference between your cost and your price is your margin, so your what you get out of it, and the difference between the price and value is. I think we definitely think about what it will take from the team. We don't share that, and it becomes almost your cost to serve. So that's almost the floor, the minimum. And then we do what we can to quantify the outcomes or the value to the customer. And so our price will fall somewhere between the two. But kind of being clear on what that band is everything.
I think as facilitators and trainers, especially if you're in a solopreneur business, it's very easy to get drawn into thinking, right, how many workshops, how many days, so that you price according to time. I even get people going, so what should be my hourly rate? I'm like, we don't have hourly rates, people. As soon as you take it to the lowest common unit, that is what they're going to press you down on. And therefore, talking about outcomes and value and wrapping pricing into make it all one number, or I often price by steps, but they know what they're going to get in each step. And if they want to try and do the maths, go for it. But I'm not any. I used to. I'll absolutely put my hand up to it as a naive, new to world, writing my own proposals. It would be like, oh, it's a 2-day workshop. That's my delivery at X, and I will do a day of design, and that is why. And then my expenses on top. And so we do that. And so I'm sure there are many people listening, and Miriam's waving frantically because we've all done it, or we are doing it.
And that's why I'm curious. So yes, again, so I will dig there again, because I asked Jenny as well. So yes, this is what you present to the client, other options of the package.
How do you get the number?
Yeah, so how do you do your pricing behind the scenes?
I have a spreadsheet. That's probably the only spreadsheet I actually own, because I am your extroverted feeler who doesn't do spreadsheets. But I work up from a bottom up. So how much time will it cost? How much time? And then how much time on top of that? Time on top? No, profit. But I've done, like you, I've done a pricing survey. So I've got a felt sense of what is the price out there. What are the market rates? I talk to people, and I've now got over my Britishness of talking about money. So I'm like, can we have a conversation about money? Like, how much are you charging? Like, give me a ballpark figure. So then going, oh, okay. And then every time I get a new client that's never worked with me, I test by putting my rates up. And I test a bit more, and I test a bit more. And then I've got bigger and braver, put my big girl pants on. And where I've got consistent clients every year, there's a price rise. And it's handling price rises. You'd never thought I used to sell booze for a living, and I used to do this as standard. But it's like when it's your own business and it's you and you're all smiling, it's suddenly like, oh. And we haven't talked about this, but this is also wrapped up in pricing, is self-worth and my inner game, my inner mentality to money. And I'm pretty sure Michael and Miriam, you both do work with other people on this, like helping them get over themselves to put a number out there. Whereas Jenny, maybe if you're talking direct to client, to corporates, it's your own thing that you get through. But so many people are like, oh, but I can't say that number. Okay, can you write it down though?
Yeah, so I see that everywhere. I don't think it goes away in big corporate environments. Yeah, amazing to hear you are experimenting and that you're raising prices each year. You are you have leaned into how challenging that pricing conversation can be. I think when it comes to, you also mentioned benchmarking against others, so doing surveys. I think just I guess a word of caution there is make sure you're benchmarking against the right comparisons. Because what I see a lot is an organisation or freelancer might look at what they deem to be competitors and how they price, and that they're overly led by that, whereas actually in their customers' minds, their alternatives are not that set of competitors, and it might be something completely different.
Good one. Thank you. Michael, I won't let you away with
I'm not off the hook. No, not a problem. So yeah, we do a lot of work with our clients around proposals and pricing, helping them with their consulting proposals. In terms of our business, the Clarity Coaching Program is what you could essentially call a productized offer. So it's a set program we take people through. It's customized to them, so we meet them where they are. For example, a client that's coming in that's doing 2 million a year, will have a certain set of challenges or areas they want to improve upon. And someone who's coming in, maybe doing 100,000 or 150,000 a year, will have another set of challenges. So our coaches, our system will adapt based on where they are. But it is a set fee for people coming into the program. It's not based on hours or anything else like that. We look at margins, of course, and we have fees that we pay to our coaches. We have other hard costs. There's advertising, marketing costs, and all that kind of stuff. But our focus has always been on running a very lean and profitable business. And yeah, we test different pricing. There's different variations of the program depending on what somebody is coming in for, and how long they're staying, and ongoing support, and so forth. But yeah, it's a productized offer, and it works really well.
Which makes everything else so much easier. You got the internal dialogue, the negotiation, everything.
For this model of business, right? It's not necessarily going to be the right model for everyone, but for the model that we use, where we have coaches and a team, a productized offering makes a lot of aspects of running a business much more efficient and effective, right? You can develop SOPs, right? Standard operating procedures. You can have processes and checklists that people can follow. It's much easier to train people. It's much easier to hire people for a specific role. So there's a lot of efficiency that we get to benefit from, and allows us to identify waste pretty easily, and just to continue making the program better and better and better, because it's like kind of talk about the blacksmith who would make the samurai swords. It's like they're just doing that, and they're doing it over and over and over again, and so they're making it better and better and better. We're not trying to be all things to all people. We work with consultants, what we call entrepreneurial consultants, helping them to grow their businesses, and that's what we're just committed to doing, day after day, and been doing it now for almost 2 decades. So it's we'll just keep doing it.
Oh, thank you. Based on the conversation, your experiences, what would be the advice you would like to give to the audience? We started with the advice you wished you had received for yourself. What is now the advice you would like to give to the audience before we depart?
I think one thing I was just going to throw in the ring in case it was useful was about and just sort of breaking down some of this apprehension about pricing. Like it's not a set it and forget it activity. Like use it to react to your current situation. So if you're just starting out, or you've got an empty book because sales are really tough right now, it's probably not the time to be really aggressive on your price. Equally, if you're flat out, your book's full, it's then it's time to start being more experimental. So you can use it very tactically to adjust as you go. And I think particularly for all businesses, whether they're sort of very actively managing their margin across different services or products, or whether sort of a one-man band offering their services, like know your walk away point. So kind of offering to sort of reducing scope to reduce price is great, but some clients are just going to try and push you too far. They don't see the value. So I think going into those difficult pricing conversations, well, they might not feel difficult, whether they do or not, kind of being super clear on what is my walk away point here is also very useful.
I'll share 3 C's. Conversations, I believe, is at the core of building every great business in the realm of businesses that we're talking about. Generally, deals aren't done, engagements, aren't committed to. People aren't signing proposals without a conversation. So focus on having as many conversations as you possibly can. That'll often teach you a lot about where the opportunities lie, and where you can make adjustments and optimizations inside of your business. Then commitment, be committed to the long term. When you have a long-term mindset, it really gives you an advantage over everybody else in the market who has a short-term mindset, is thinking more transactional, is not thinking as relationship-based. They're making decisions just based on what's going to work in the short term, but may not benefit them in the long term. So when you give yourself that space to understand that, a mistake today is a lesson learned, it's an opportunity for you to get better when you learn from it. So I think that commitment to the long term is a big one. And then just the final C is consistency. That in everything that you do, you need, you should be consistent. So when you start a podcast, don't just put out a couple episodes and judge success or failure based on that, or don't just show up and write, once in a blue moon on LinkedIn or on a blog. Whatever you are committing to, be consistent with it. because I think probably all of us have experienced that the success that we've had hasn't come from, it's not an overnight success, even though that's what everybody online likes to tell you that you can create these days. Real success typically takes a lot longer. It's not as easy as everyone says, but it's also not as hard necessarily. You just need to, have conversations, be committed and be consistent, and good things typically come your way.
Someone recently said to me, their bit of advice, and I loved it actually, is if you don't tell people what you do, you're being selfish because they won't know where to find you. I don't know if that's a quote or what, but it just sticks in my head. So what that means is, well, if you've got this passion for what you do, you need to tell people, and whether that's through conversations. But I also think it's about showing up and being present. And for us in this world, it's on your platform of choice, LinkedIn, Insta, Facebook, whatever it is, but show up and share with people, give them insights, give them some ideas, write an article. But if you don't do that, they'll never know. You're keeping it hidden, basically. So don't be selfish and keep your talents hidden, share them.
Thank you so much for sharing so generously with me and the audience today. Great value. Thank you for your time, contribution.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. And good
Thanks, everyone.
discussion, Michael, Kirsty. Nice to see you again, Michael, Miriam, and very nice to meet you, Kirsty.
Have you finished the recording?
No, not yet. I put the links to which you find you in the show notes.
Thanks, love.
Dun, 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 dun.